Well, thank you, Dennis, so much for allowing me to be here with the most important people in Rotary over our next year, and that is our president-elect. So let's everyone give a round of applause to our president-elects. That's right. And I'm not just saying that you're the most important people in Rotary. I know for a fact that you're the most important people in Rotary. You know, Dennis was right. If I didn't have this wonderful virtual background celebrating your districts in Scotland and Ireland, you would see my office on the 18th floor of Evanston. And the reason I bring that up, and I'm glad Dennis brought it up, is because Rotary doesn't happen on the 18th floor. It happens in your clubs. And that's why you are the most important people. And that's the reason why this weekend was organized for you. You know, I was at last year, I was at a Pets, and my friend Bill Donnelly was ahead of um, education for that event. And I remember him saying, you know, that there are so many things you learn in Rotary, and there's so many things during the president-elect training seminar that you have to think about, from raising money to picking a board to, you know, running the daily meetings and the socials and all those things. And so I thought about it for a year. And what I did for you is I went through all the material there is about being a great president, from Rotary Leadership Institute materials to the Learning Center. And I boiled it down into 6 things, because I really believe if you do these 6 strategies and you implement them and really do them in all aspects, whether locally or internationally, you're going to be successful. You're going to be great presidents. And I tell you, it's going to be the best year of your life. You're going to be so connected to everyone in your club. They're going to call you and let you know when they have grandchildren. They're going to let you know when they have jobs. They're going to let you know when they're going on vacation. And they're going to be looking for you to make change. So you're just going to absolutely love it. It was my favorite year when I in Rotary. So I have a little PowerPoint presentation. Since we're on video, I thought it would be good to share a few things. So for you to remember what we're going to talk about today, I came up with an acronym. It's ASPIRE. And each of these letters, the A, the S, the P, the I, the R, the E, is going to give you one of these 6 strategies. And I'm going to try to keep my remarks very brief, because I understand that you have lots of questions. And that's always my favorite part of any presentation, is the questions at the end, because I want you to leave with the knowledge that you came seeking here today. And I will also give you my contact information. I'll give you this PowerPoint so that you can refer back to it, or you can reach out and call me or text me, or every one of your wonderful leaders here today. They know how to get in touch with me. So I have this little picture here of a simple local project. This is a trash pickup day. That's me in the middle and my son to the left. Because I wanted you to know that if you practice these things, you could do it simply in your backyard. And you could also do it internationally. This is when I was with a couple of my friends doing one of my first international projects. But this is what I want you to remember today. These are the 6 things. You need to assess and act. You need to say thank you. And these things might seem simple, but they are the basis. It's like playing a sport and like playing basketball. If you do the layups, then you don't have to worry so much about the 3-pointers. They'll come too. You need to prepare and promote for your socials, your meetings, everything you do. You need to inspire, which is one of the most important things to do, and what you're going to be best at by the time we leave here today. We're going to make sure we recharge and renew, and we're going to engage and enjoy. So let's get into this. Assess and act. You know, Rotary is like any business, right? We're providing a product. That product is basically the club experience. If people like the experience in your club, they're going to stay. They're going to bring their friends and family and people they work out with and worship with, and their neighbors, people they work with. But if you don't give them what they want, they're going to leave. So the important thing about the assessment is we're basically asking our club members, what do you want in our club? So how many of you, raise your hand if you actually do assessments at your club? Okay. And typically, when we asked most districts and clubs, they don't do surveys of any kind. And when we ask them when they do their surveys, they usually do exit interviews. Well, my belief and my experience has led me to the conclusion that doing a survey when people leave may not be the best thing for a Rotary club. Because if you think about it, you don't have time to make a change to keep that member. And also, they're Rotarians, they're nice people, so they might not tell you the real reason they're leaving. So surveys aren't hard to do. If you have a small club, you could just pick up the phone and call people and ask them, do you like where we meet, when we meet? Do you like our socials? Do you like our service projects? If you have a large club with several hundred people, you might want to consider doing an electronic survey. And there's all kinds of tools. And I've included those in my PowerPoint, but I know Steve Martin, your wonderful Rotary coordinator from your area, talked about those this morning. So we won't go into that in great detail, but I have lists at the end of the presentations that you can use later. So you don't have to worry about taking a bunch of notes. It'll all be there. And it's interesting when you conduct a survey, and if you're wondering how, you could simply go to My Rotary and type in membership survey. That'll give you a good survey form that you can use with your club members. Or you could do a club health check, which is something your board of directors for your club could do. But you don't have to follow those. A lot of times when people pull those up, they say, this is really complicated. There's too many questions. It's too large. You could put them in a simple Survey Monkey or other kind of program, and then just go ahead and send it out and get your answers. And when you get your answers, make sure that you act on them. It's so important to do a survey because if you think about it, your people are going to tell you, your club members are going to say, this president cares about me because she or he is asking for my opinion. And if you make that change that they're asking for, then they're going to feel like they belong to your club. And sometimes a survey as a president, it could solve a problem that you have. I remember last year, there was a club in my district, and the president called me because he said half the people wanted to do away with the four-way tests, which, by the way, a president can't do. That's a council legislation deal. And half the people, he said, wanted to keep the four-way test. So he said, what do I do? And it might sound simple, but I said, do a survey and call me back. So he did a survey, and he found out that of those 22 members, only 2 of the members wanted to do away with the four-way test. The other ones wanted to keep it. So sometimes you'll find out, and I'm sure you have in your other leadership capacities, that sometimes it's a vocal minority that is wanting to make the change. So a survey can help you go back to your members and say, well, the vast majority of you said this. So that's another reason why you could do an assessment. And don't worry about doing a survey and thinking that everyone's going to be really harsh. Only about my experience has been about 5% of the folks or less are dissatisfied and or very dissatisfied. But the reality is the reasons they are dissatisfied can be changed pretty easily. Sometimes it's a simple fix. They don't want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get to a 7 o'clock meeting. So you could have a satellite club. So make sure you do that survey. And of course, there's different resources, and we won't go into all of them now because I know that you have questions that you want to ask. But this will be provided to you in a PDF form so that you can look at it later. So one of the most important things you can do as president is you can say thank you. You know, we were talking amongst ourselves before you got on, and I was asking, what are the most burning issues that you as presidents are saying? And what your DGEs, your wonderful district governor-elects told me is, you know, attracting members is one and retaining members. If you say thank you to your members, your retention rates will increase. Everyone likes a thank you. You could sit outside, you know, the country club or hotel that you meet and just shake their hands and smile and say, thank you for coming to that service. So I came up with a list, and again, you could take this with you, of the simple ways to say yes. You could do it in so many different ways. You could put up a board at your meeting, thanking people who came to the last service project. You could write them a hand thank you note. You could write them a note on their birthday. You know, you could publish their name and picture on social media. You could create a story about the volunteers in the newsletter. But if you say thank you, it's going to take you a long way. The other thing you need to do as president is you really need to prepare and promote for the meetings. You know, the meetings are really fun when you prepare for them. And it could be as simple as making up a PowerPoint. You know, it's funny, my wife sent me an article yesterday that was written by Warren Buffett, who's an investment person here in the US. And he said the difference between great people and really great people is that the really great people are able to say no. And I'm sure that was directed just towards me, but I am one of those people who tend to say yes a lot. But what's interesting is this article goes through and says, if you say no as a president, you could actually prioritize what are the most important things, and you can empower other people to do it. So many times when I start a club, there's that spark plug who's all excited about the club, and she or he may decide that she wants to do the newsletter. And I'm thinking of a particular instance in my mind. And she wanted to get the speakers and she wanted to do all that. The reason I bring this up is all that stuff needs to be done, but it doesn't need to be done by you. You can actually have other people get engaged and they'll feel like they have a job and they'll stay. And I bring that up for preparedness. When I was president, and it really was a fun year, I didn't do my slideshows every week. There was a lady in my club who had a human resource department, and she put up notices at various universities around my area. And I had a really good intern, and she put my PowerPoints together. I would just feed her information, and she would do the PowerPoints. That's an example of what you can do as president, where you're getting the maximum out. You're in front of your club presenting, but someone else is helping you get ready. And the other thing you need to do, and Phil Dwyer on the call here is an expert, is promoting. I remember the first time years ago when I spoke in Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland, Phil was able to get 1,000 people on a virtual call for a membership program that we were doing because he promoted it. So when you're president, think of it as having two jobs. You have to do what you need to do, which is have the meetings, have the socials, have those, fun service projects, but you need to promote it. You need to invite people to those things, not just your club members. Rotary talks about participants a lot. It doesn't talk about always members and Rotaractors. It talks about participants. Why? Because that's everyone we touch, whether it be, the youth services when we have youth exchange students come to our districts and stay with our districts. All those people are important because they're Rotary's future. So prepare for the meetings, promote them. When I say prepare, the other things you have to do when you lead a meeting is make sure that you respect the people's time. If you're having a service project, let's say, don't make your volunteers come 2 hours early if you only need 45 minutes to set up. And make sure your meetings are organized. Start and end on time. If you're going to have a speaker and you have a speaker that's going to speak for 20 minutes, at least that's the schedule. Don't give them only 5 minutes at the end. And these things are not only respectful to the speaker, it's also respectful to all the participants. You could find interesting programs by going to Rotary International. You could talk to your assistant governors, or you could talk to your governors. And Rotary actually has a calendar where every month, today is April 1, so we go into the environment this month. So that might be one way to, spruce things up. And when you have speakers, make sure you have a speaker committee. Don't have one person do all the speakers, because you might end up with just nonprofits or just business people or just politicians. When you have different people involved, you not only engage more people, but you have more greater variety. Now, the most important thing you can do as president is to inspire people. And I know we talk about a lot about membership and that kind of thing, but if you tell your own personal stories, people are going to be attracted to you and your club. One big mistake I made when I was president is I always thought it's not about Tom, so I didn't talk about my family. I didn't talk about me or any of that stuff. And people would ask me, who are you? People want to know, are you single? Are you married? Do you have family? They want to know who's leading them. So share your stories. This is a picture of in America, we have this Rose Bowl parade float, and it's gone back hundreds of years. And Rotary has a float in it every year. So you'll see our current president down there on the right with Nick. And I'm the Monopoly looking guy next to the big bowl in the middle. So, me telling my friends about this story, a bunch of us went the last couple of years, a new club that we started, to go out there and actually put roses in this float. And it was really fun. So if you have those stories, share them, because they want to hear about those stories. And if you don't have those stories, you can go to Rotary Magazine or call any of us, or actually just your governor. But people like the stories, and they like your stories as president. So tell those personal stories. You'll be surprised on what kind of impact you'll have with them. Now, the other thing you need to do is you need to recharge and you need to renew. Rotary, sometimes people call it a cult, right? Because people give their lives to it and they spend so much time with it. But I tell you, you can have so much fun as president if you keep Rotary a part of your life, but don't make it your entire life. This is my wife and son eating a banana split 2 years ago at the Rose Bowl parade. And it's funny, when I was president, I, with the help of my friends, of course, brought in 31 different members, new members to our club. And every week it got more fun because you got to see smiling faces, people from, your church, people from your work, people who are your neighbors, people you exercise with. So you can make Rotary a part of your life by bringing in all these people, and you'll be much better off. If you only focus on Rotary and you're not doing those other things, then we're just talking to ourselves and we're not talking outside, and we're not reaching out to the community and bringing more people into our community. So whatever you do, please don't get burned out. Please don't forget your family. Don't forget the other things you do, and your Rotary Club will be better off for it. So I was speaking last week in your wonderful area of the world, to Southern England and Wales. And someone sent me a note afterwards and said, I need to change the engage to engage and enjoy. And I thought that was just a brilliant idea, because if you enjoy being president of your club, that joy that you have serving Rotary is going to be infectious, and they're all going to get excited about it. If you make membership your number one priority, and I know it's hard, because there's all these priorities, but I chose to make membership my priority when I was president, because what I found out was when I started bringing in members, we had more hands to do that local service project, that international service project. We had more Paul Harris Fellow Society members. Everything we did, we had more of, and it got better. And there was just that wind behind your sail. But of course, today we talked with their district governor-elects, and they said we need to actually retain members, and that is so important. And he's right. I'm on the RI, Rotary International Membership Growth Committee, and it's very scary to me how many members we bring in every year, about 150,000, but we end up losing. Last year we gained, but for the last 20 years, we usually lose more than we bring in. But the really scary part is if you look when we lose them, usually over 50%, 52%, we lose in the first 3 years, and 10% we lose in the first year that they join. So last year we had 19,000 people leave Rotary in the same year they joined. And why is that? It's because we don't engage them. People don't leave Rotary International. They leave their club because that's all they know. But if we engage them, if we give them jobs to do, if we have a new member orientation, or we assign them to a specific committee, then they know a few people. Put them on that speakers committee, put them on the service committee, because then they have someone to eat lunch with or breakfast with. So engage and enjoy. So of course, I included a lot of materials, and we're just going to go, not even go through them. I just want to let you know there are these tools out there. Go to My Rotary, but also look at the people here that are leading this organization. Your district governors, your assistant district governors, all these wonderful past district governors, they can help you too. So now I'd like Chris to help me take your questions. And also I'm available to you whenever you need me. Thank you.
To think about. We've talked 2 or 3 times today about the Rotary Health Check, and Steve mentioned it as well. Can you just tell us a little bit more? Oh,
sure.
You haven't been hearing me, have you?
No, but I got health check, and that's enough for me to answer. I'll be responsive, I promise. And if not, just
well, if you could just tell us a little bit about how you actually ran one in your club.
So, the last one I did wasn't in my club, it was at our district. And what we did is we went to Rotary and we pulled off the survey, the member health check that you said. And what we did is we simplified it, Chris, because we figured, what do we really need to know to be a good president of our clubs and to be a good district? And what really the president needs to know, he needs to know, do they like when we meet? Do they like where we meet? Do they like our topics for our speakers? And do they like the socials and the service projects? Really, if you put it down to those 5 things, Chris, that's what we really want to know. Now, there's a lot of details, and Rotary International does a fantastic job. And I've been studying the surveys as part of the membership team the committee. I don't like the word committee. If you could change it to team, everybody wants to be part of your team. Nobody wants to be part of a committee. So, but our membership committee, we looked at the surveys, Chris, and it's interesting because what we found out is the number one reason people leave their clubs is because of their club experience, the club culture. So if you can make that culture into something that I like to call simply irresistible, people will stay. So how do you do it? Ask them what they want. And the important thing, Chris, is that we do this regularly. Because if you think about it, every year there's new people coming into your club and there's people leaving. So that culture might change. So Rotary International suggests that you conduct a survey at least once a year. Was that responsive to your question, Chris?
Yes, it was. Thanks very much.
Thank
Obviously,
you.
lip reading is another of your skills, Tom.
I've been practicing since 2020. Since COVID. Yeah.
I know some of our PEs here will be active people within their businesses and within their communities. You said learn to say no and to delegate. What sort of skills do you need for that?
I think you need to be humble enough to accept the premise that you're not perfect and that you can't do everything yourself. I was one of those individuals where I really believe, Chris, and all you president-elects out there, and you're going to be president, you're going to be leading your club in 91 days. This is the time for you to prioritize. But if you're doing everything, you can't prioritize and you can't focus. And the action plan priority, the fourth action plan priority of our strategic plan, it tells us we need to adapt, but in order to do that, we need to focus. So when I was president, I was focusing on membership. What I did, I had a lot of friends, so I brought those friends in. But I was smart enough to, when we had our board meetings, we didn't talk, we always talked about the financials and minutes and all that, but we talked about membership first before we got to anything else. And I assigned my friends to different people on the board. So if I had a retired friend and she was, 70 or so, I would fix her up with another female board member who was 70 or so, so she can follow up. I didn't think that I had time to tell all my friends all the wonderful things about Rotary because I only had a certain number of hours in the day. So I think admitting that you can't do everything is the biggest step you can take in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy, last week when we were, as you say, at the Southwest thing, you mentioned that your wife is a member of quite a small club, which is a very different experience, I guess, from yours. A lot of our clubs are small and a lot of them are having a gap between any new joiners we're getting and the older members in the club. How do we cope with that culture?
I'm sorry if I try to make or sound like I'm making everything easy, but Chris, it really is easy. I think a small club needs to realize that it could be small and mighty at the same time, and it can't shy away from doing impactful things. And you're right, I'm in the smaller club. I'm 83 and my wife's got 250, so she's in the bigger club. So what we do is we share youth exchange. That's an important part of what Catherine and my son Andrew and I do. We have an exchange student from the Czech Republic, and it adds so much energy to what we do and adds so much energy to our club. So our club was thinking, well, we don't have a lot of money to do youth exchange. So we partnered up with my wife's club. They put in the money, we put in the youth exchange host families, and we get things done. So if you're a smaller club, don't think you can't do that international service project. Get a local club to partner up with and do it. You could have great impact as a small club. And the more you do, the more you're going to realize people are going to want to be a part of that club. I'm not a big person into the elevator speech. I remember we were here for Pets Alliance a few months ago in Evanston, and that's where the heads of all the pets get together to talk about, what you as PEs and PNs want to get out of pets. And I had to go by the bar in order to get to the elevator to get to my hotel room. And so there's a bunch of people at the bar. They said, Tom, come over here. And it was the strangest thing I ever saw. There were 15 Rotarians, and they were all I don't know how to describe it other than they were having an intervention with the bartender, saying that he has to join Rotary. And they were pounding him with, we do this and we do service projects, we do youth exchange. And they asked me, Tom, we need to convince this person to join Rotary. Um, Give us your elevator speech. And I said, I don't have an elevator speech. They said, how can you be our membership expert and you don't have a, um, I'm sorry, I'm laughing so much. I'm taking this very seriously. It's just stress relief because I know how important it is that I motivate you and inspire you as president-elect today. But I said, you know, the most important thing we can do as presidents, if we're going to attract people, is we need to listen to them. So I just asked the bartender, young man in his 20s, what do you want most in your life? And he said, well, right now I'm studying to be an engineer. I want to be able to rub shoulders with people of significance in my community in that area. So that was the answer, but it wasn't the answer that's 15 us Rotarians were thinking. So I think as a president, let's listen to them, and then I think we could grow. Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you. One of the other things you mentioned, Tom, was that the fact that so many people leave, certainly after 3 years, but an awful lot of people do leave in their first year. This is very much a problem in our islands. How do you think we can stop this? It's a big question, but
Yeah, and thank you very much for asking that very important question. And we have the same issue in North America. And what we discovered is when we talked to the people who have left, is they didn't feel comfortable in their club. And this is a big ask, but as president, I would ask you to think about the larger Rotary. Because, you know, when I was a president, I had this goal that I was going to bring in all these members, and I didn't share the actual number of my goal because I thought people would laugh at me. Because, you know, they're saying bring in 7 people. But what I found out is if you bring them in and they leave, it doesn't do any good. So think about in your new member orientation, tell them about how great Rotary is. And if someone's leaving because their experience didn't fit, tell them about another club that they might fit in. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, Rotary International, we have Rotary action groups that help you plan projects, experts that help you fund it. We have Rotary Fellowship, that's what we call recreational vehicles. I got to be careful when I talk over here. I used to make a joke about a garage, and then after, I don't know, I think it was Nikki called me up and says, garage is not where we park our cars, it's where we get petrol. So, so I'm being careful not to tell any too many of my normal dad jokes. But seriously, if we make our clubs a place where they want to be, then they won't leave. And how do we know how they want to be? Ask them. And Chris, you know, so many times we talked about today, the district governor-elects said we want to get young people in. Well, that's great. We can invite young people and they can join, but we don't want them leaving 3 weeks later. So what do? Ask them to bring their friends and ask them for 3 or 4 of them to join together as a group. And when they come in, give them their own service project that they can work out and be proud of. So they're doing it as a class. So every time they come to your breakfast meeting or your lunch meeting or your dinner meeting, they'll have their friends and they'll stay. You know, why do people stay after 3 years? We've been focusing on they leave, you know, right when they come in. Well, they're like all of us on this call today. They have their lifelong friends. I would never leave my traditional club. You know, sometimes I speak about when people want me to about forming new clubs, but I've never left. I've helped form dozens of clubs around the world, but I never left my club because I have my friends there. So we just have to know that they belong. You know, we talk so much, Chris, about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, that's all stuff that the club is doing to make things welcoming. But what we really need to talk about is belonging. We want people when they start to feel like they belong to that club. You know, when I was first president, um, I was proud that I was bringing these people in. And PDG, friend of mine, a great guy, says, well, that doesn't matter if you're not going to do a new member orientation. And our club wasn't doing one at the time. They're not going to stay. And I thought that was really wise. So as a president, make sure you're leaving it great for your president-elect and president nominee. Thank you for the question.
thank you. And Alan from Lockerbie and Districts has said that how important it is to recognise the donations, and that the community and that and what it represents to the community. We are, as Rotary, are nothing without their contribution.
Great
Thank you.
point, Ellen.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So true.
One of the other things that you talked about was, and again, we've looked at that a little bit already, but there's a lot of concern at the moment, I think, about culture and the way that Rotary culture is changing. And I think some people feel that some really good things are going out with the change. So have you experienced that as well?
Yes, I'm very glad you brought that up. First, I think we need to realize that change is important. We're an organization that's been around 118 years, and no organization lasts that long unless you're able to adapt. So it's funny when we actually go to pets, I'm always concerned about how do we make next year's pets better? So when there's president nominees, if I'm ever have any say in a pet, I say, can we get the president nominees together and ask them what they want next year? And you know, Chris, the question you ask is one of the top three. It's always, how do I grow membership? How can I be a good public speaker? And how can I make change in my club without alienating or upsetting people?
Mm.
So just last year, it wasn't this past International Assembly, but an International Assembly before, Rotary came up with a change model. And it's interesting, they show it graphically with a wheel, where first you do an assessment, you do the survey, and then you actually go down the wheel. And this wheel, you can go back if you feel like you're not making progress. And then when you get to the top, then you start over again with another survey. But what they talk about is communicating the change and letting people know what's important. Let's say if it was my club, I would say membership is important. I'd paint a picture for them of how they can make how the club could be better off if we grow that membership. Then you come up with a communication plan, you come up with the tools. But then when it comes to implementation, and this gets to answer your question, and sometimes it's hard to answer these questions with short terms and get the premise of it. But what they do is they say in implementation, the most important part of the the sixth step is this implementation, and it's nurturing the people who are adverse to the change. You know, trying to make a change by yourself as president is like pushing a wet noodle. It doesn't go anywhere. But if you involve your president-elect, because in 91 days you'll be leading your clubs, and you involve the president nominees and the other influencers, you know, make sure that the people who are not supportive of the change, find out why they're not supportive. Because so many times in my personal experience, they feel like they're going to be left out. You know, my friend Stephanie, RIP and Stephanie, Rotary National President nominee Stephanie. By the time it's President Stephanie, my job's so much easier because I could just say President Stephanie. She'll a less long title. She tells a story about her club, and there was a treasurer named Byron, and Byron was treasurer for 28 years. Well, you know, if you ask someone else to be a treasurer because you're trying to get new blood in, make sure you comfort and nurture Byron and say, hey, Byron, we need help with our gala. We need help with our golf tournament. Can you put together a manual or a flash drive that'll help the next person? So if you nurture them, that change is accepted and you won't lose people. So don't be afraid to change. Bring people along, nurture the people who are resistant to it, and then do that survey and see what the next change needs to be. Thank you.
I've written nurture on my notepad. Thank you very much, Tom. And one final thing, you talked about clubs working together and small clubs partnering with other clubs. That sometimes can lead to conflict, but it can also really work well. But how do you think we can avoid the conflict?
Well, to put it simply, you can do a joint new project that neither one has territory in. You know, the December before last, I wanted to serve our new neighbors to my community, the Afghan refugees. So I brought 5 clubs together and we started a program. That was the picture you saw on the Engage, but I was trying to get through it quickly to get to the questions. And so we brought 5 clubs together, and I tell you, we had members in our clubs who we weren't seeing because they just didn't like the service projects we were doing. They were kind of burnt out of doing the same old thing. So when we started bringing, and it eventually got to over 200 Afghan refugees with about 20 Rotarians, we were finding them jobs. We translated the driver's manual. Um, into Pashtun and Dori because we listened to the refugees and they said, we can't get jobs because we can't drive, and we can't drive because we don't have a driver's license manual. I had just brought my friend Peter into the club 2 weeks earlier, and he was trying to fit in. Well, Pashtun and Dori aren't translatable in Google Translate, but Peter, my friend who just joined my club, he worked for a hedge fund, and he had software that was able to do that. So he did that and worked with the community to get it all tweaked up. But other people who we thought were going to leave our club came back because they liked helping these people find jobs. They liked helping them sign up for a library card so they could have internet. There was no territory because my wife's club, they didn't own it. My club, we didn't own it. We were starting it, but our other 3 clubs, that's a way to do it, Chris. Start a new project. Then there's no territory you have to divide up.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm laughing here, Tom, because
I'm sorry, I'm laughing too. I'm just
no, Callan Dick has written to me and said, "You've written nurture. I've written wet noodle." All I can say is, Callan, I've written wet noodle as well. I think
yes.
And I think that is a little bit about what you were describing a minute ago. Let's avoid the wet noodle. I'm just going to quickly go through my notes to make sure that I've covered everything, Tom. Yeah, I'm just going to finish on a final one. And again, you've touched on this earlier, but you've said, inspire by telling personal stories.
Mhm.
So how do you tell whether something is actually a personal story that people are going to laugh at, particularly if you use some lovely words like wet noodle, but also how much of the club do you really want how much do you want the club to really know what your personal life is about?
Chris, it depends on who you are as president, depends who you are as a person. But it's easy, at least when I was president, to think that my stories weren't worthy. So I want to share a story with you as an example. So people wonder why I spend a lot of time on Rotary. And it's because I feel that Rotary has given me so much more than I could give Rotary back. So, one story. A few years back, we had a wonderful youth exchange student named Paco. And you could have called him Happy Paco because he was smiling, was happy. He's one of those rare kids who actually, he does well in school, he does well in sports. He was playing the national soccer team for his age in Valencia, Spain. And he always wanted to help out, whether we're doing dishes or yard work. It was quite nice. So two 2 weeks into it, I came down and Paco was just sobbing uncontrollably. And I couldn't even ask him. I tried to ask him what was wrong, couldn't tell me. So I picked up the phone, I called his mother, and I said, what's wrong with Paco? He's crying. I've never seen him like this before, and he won't tell me why. And she said, well, his father just died and he had only been gone 2 weeks. Um, and I just told him. So I said, okay, Catherine, Andrew, and I will get on a plane. We'll bring Paco home for the funeral. And she says, there's not going to be a funeral. And Paco is to stay with you at your house for the whole year. Not usually you go 3 months, 3 months, and 3 months because it matches up with our school system and the exchange students live with different families. So I said, okay, can we fly you here to be with us? So she flew here with Paco's younger brother, Danny, who must have been, Paco was 16, Danny was 8, and this all has a point. And then Sarah was 6. And so when they got here, they let us know, well, she let Paco and Catherine and I know, not the other kids, that Paco's father had died via suicide, which all the psychologists told us that's the worst form of abandonment that anyone could ever have, especially a teenager, because a teenager seems to see the world egocentrically, that everything is related to them. So they must have done something to cause this. So my Rotary Club, this is always a hard story for me to get through without crying. And then nobody takes a speaker credibly if you cry. So we had a memorial service. We're Catholic and Paco's family is Catholic. And suicide is one of those, they wouldn't have a service there, but we had a service at our church, and we had 250 Rotarians from all over the district. So I learned that night, and for the rest of the year, I mean, people bring their dogs over, so Paco could have a dog for a while because we no longer have a dog. I learned that Rotary is a family. So is that story worthy to tell? Who knows? But it was important to explain me. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Tom, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm joking as well. That was a lovely story. Thank you. And thank you too for the personal time that you've given to this particular pet. Not Phil and I know, and Dennis, that we were working with you at 11:30 our time yesterday, in order that we could get Stephanie's video done. So thank you for the personal time you give to Rotary, and thank you for the time you've given to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, thank you so much, and we're opening up with a wonderful story, and other people